There's a lot of different ways to interpret Terra Nova. At the beginning, we're just given a tempo indicator here. We're given allegro, quarter note equals 116. Even when the style changes here at 28, we don't get any information here. We've got some program notes. We know that it's contemporary and hip sounding. We know that it's got ever-changing time signatures and some low finger patterns, dynamic contrasts. It doesn't give us a lot of information as far as interpretation on what you can do with it. It's pretty open-ended, which is kind of cool. I'm going to give you my take on it, on what I think, and you can make your own decisions, but I'm going to tell you what I do and why. But, as long as you have a good reason and you can justify your interpretation, I think, if it's open-ended like this, you can do what you want to do, and, a good contest judge should be able to accept a decent interpretation. All right, let's take a look at the A theme here. We have just repeated eighth notes in the cellos and basses. They're just laying down the roots of these chords. We have a 1, 4, 5, 1 progression, and in the next chord progression we have 1, 6, 5, 6, 5, 1, and we get more of the same here at 11, where we start to get some interesting variation. And this kind of gives us a clue into what sort of style that we could pick is right here at 19. We start to get some chromatic alterations. We get B naturals here and F sharps here. Are we in G major? Doesn't really look like it. What's going on here? The other interesting thing is that we have 3 chords a whole step apart that are all major, which does not occur in nature. So we have B flat major, C major, and D major. This does not have an F sharp in it, but we can assume from here that it could be D major. That's what we've seen so far. So what's going on here? Well, if you look at the voice leading here, and here and right here at the beginning also, where we have root movement by step, if you look at the voicing, there's a lot of parallel motion, a lot of planing going on, and a lot of these parallel fifths. And in traditional voice leading, parallel fifths would be forbidden, unacceptable, and it's deliberately done here, and we end up with open fifths here. And this gives me this idea of, number one, with the chord progression, number two, with the voice leading, that this is kind of in like a rock chord progression, right? And that we end up here almost like with power chords, where we just have like these power chords just going up in whole steps. And so that's why I think this is more of a rock and roll, maybe slightly on the metal side of that genre. And so I kind of interpret it that way, and I kind of have my students play. So when I think of all of these eighth notes playing, and especially the repeated eighth notes playing, I think about maybe like a tamer version of thrash metal, where they have like where they're playing a chord and then they have like they palm mute the rest of the chords and stuff. That's kind of how I interpret it. Not as aggressively, but the dynamics at the beginning are softer, so we kind of get that palm mute type effect, and we have that driving rhythm. We get these accents here, at 19, where it starts to get big and heavy. And that's just what I'm going to go with. I'm going to say what key are we in here at 19? Well, I could say, we're in F major, and we have all these deceptive resolutions, right? Like here I could say, all right, well, it's F, G, D, so what is that? That's going to be 1, 2, 6 deceptive resolution here, and then here we've got B flat, C, D, so what would that be? That would be 4, 5, 6 deceptive resolution, which is valid, but is it functional harmony or is it planing? And as we go on here at 28, we see something very interesting, and I'll go over that in a minute, but are we in a key? Are we borrowing from F major? Are we modulated here, or are we in the key of rock? And to me, I think it's the latter. In 28, we have a style change. The notes get broader. We lose the running eighth notes, and this decrescendo here, we switch to quarter notes. Cellos and basses are playing G pizzicato, and these Gs, for 4 measures are basically pedal tones in a lot of spots. We get a key change to G major, maybe. If we look at the chord progression here, it's very interesting. At 29, we have F major, then G major, then A major. So F, G, A, again, 3 major chords, each a whole step apart. Okay, let's take a look back at 21. B flat major, C major, D major, as opposed to F major, G major, A major. It's a progression that is just down 1 on the circle of fifths. So we go from B flat up to F on the circle of fifths. Then we have the same progression here, B flat to F, C to G, D to A. So I think it's interesting that it's the same chord progression that's here at 21. It's just 1 notch up on the circle of fifths. Now it's the same progression but different style. Like, I don't feel that we're in the key of rock anymore. I feel like this is more of a march here with the quarter notes. We're in 4/4 time instead of 3/4. 3/4-2/4. The meter isn't really changing here in this B section. It's kind of fanfare-ish the way it's written with the violins and violas, and even here at 32, we get this this kind of fanfare figure, except it's using contrary motion. The cellos and basses have some melodic material here at 35. That's a really cool melody. Upper voices are sustaining. They're louder in dynamics here. First violins have a similar melody here, although a truncated one coming into 41. 41, the style changes yet again. We have this syncopation stuff, and we start to get short note values in this broader section. The first violins are sustaining over the top, but we still get the syncopation all the way through until the 8th notes return. Then we have the del segno back to measure 3, which is the first statement of the A theme after the 2-measure introduction. The coda is more or less in the style of the A theme. It has a lot of statements from the A theme. So, we've got this material in the coda, which resembles 23. 24 is a little bit different in the first violin part. We switched to 4/4 here, which includes the meter from the B section and some of the sustaining stuff in the violin viola part, but we retain the 8th notes here, so we're kind of tying in both styles together until at 51 we have this cascading A theme. Each section comes in and plays the A theme, and then they all come in together at the 2/4 and then slow down to the end. Even for the final chord, it's open fifths. We don't get the 3rd. And for this A minor chord, we don't get C sharp here. And even though it's C natural, that's still frustrated down to the A instead of going up to the D. So even at the very end, we're still frustrating the leading tone that we don't even have, the subtonic, and we're never really given a true perfect authentic cadence. One of the problems that I hear in Terra Nova is that orchestras just don't ever get soft enough. Some do, but a lot of them kind of ignore this piano dynamic at the beginning. And I think for this to work, and especially in the style that I'm describing, with the key of rock style, I think that we really need to play soft. I mean, a true piano, in order to build that tension and anticipation. We know something's coming. We're giving a clue here at 9 and 10 with this dynamic change. We go up to a forte and then back down. We get another clue here at measure 5. We have groups of 3. So now we have D, 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 B flat, B flat, B flat, which is some foreshadowing to 19, because we're about to get groups of 3 instead of groups of 2. And they're accented in that measure. And they're also accented when that happens again in 21, 23. But a little bit of foreshadowing here. Same thing when that happens later on in measure 13. But yeah, most orchestras play way too loud here. Like hold it back, and especially here on these quarter notes, like all these open Gs here, it just gets way too heavy. Yes, we want to phrase, and I'm going to do a video on phrasing later, but if you smash that open G, it totally destroys the phrasing and it ruins the style as well. So you got to be truly piano here at the beginning. You know, hold back, you know, be patient with the dynamics. It's going to get loud, it's going to get raucous, but you got to wait. And sometimes young kids have trouble with that patience and trouble anticipating and waiting. They want it right now. They want everything loud right now, and they're just sawing away on these open Ds at the beginning, cello basses, and right here. And, you know, that takes away from all the phrase potential and stylistic opportunities that we have here. So don't do that. Don't accidentally create accents in these quarter notes just because the meter changes. We still want to phrase, and we still want to play them tastefully. That goes for all of these. You know, some orchestras get a hold of this and they come in and they're just like bim bum 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 bum. You know, they're just really smashing it, and I don't prefer it that way. I think that it should be played soft because that's the way it's written, and I think you could do a lot more if you start soft. If you start too loud and you start crushing these quarter notes, there's a lot less than you can do with it because you've maxed out already in measure 4, and that's not a good thing. We do get some accents in 19 and 20, 21, 22 to emphasize the rhythmic mode change. And when I conduct this at 19, and this might be taboo, but I conduct the accents. So I will conduct 19 in 2, sort of West Side Story style. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to emphasize the accents. If your students have good equipment, you can use weighted accents here, but it's just to emphasize the metric mode modulation, so that we're having this 3 against 3, 2 against 3 effect, and that's the reason for the accents. Metrically, it kind of does that on its own, but they can give it a little bit extra weight. If they're playing on really small instruments with fractional size strings and those accents are just hurting our pitch, you know, we can use a little bit of bow speed to do that also. But, you know, tastefully put these accents in place to where we can continue to phrase and make these 2-bar phrases happen. For the A section here, I would think more on the lines of middle of the bow for most of this. Maybe not in 10 for the dotted half note. And you might need to find a way to get from the dotted half note back to the middle of the bow. A lot of times your low strings are going to be playing at the frog, and a lot of times they do that because they have bad bow holds and their wrists are locked and they're using shoulder. That's going to slow the orchestra down, and it's going to make it too heavy. So get them out to the middle, maybe do some bow push-ups to make sure that they're not extending that pinky out and locking the wrist. That's a very common problem in low strings. So they can get out to the middle of the bow and use the wrist to make these 8th notes happen. So don't get too loud and heavy, and they can phrase and play with good style. At measure 28, our low strings are pizzicato, so we don't have to worry about bow placement there, but we do need to make sure that we're playing with proper technique. In 28, I like to have my players play more towards the balance point here. So, you know, we had this dotted half note. We can reset during the rest, reset at the balance point, and that gives us some room to work. Again, we're back to piano here after getting through with the raucous part of the A section. B section starts out piano, and it stays piano for quite a while. We still have the 2-bar phrases, but we can play smooth and soft. And at 35, we crescendo up to forte when the cellos and bass players come in on their melody. It's nice and loud, but still broad. And I like to treat this more of as a maestoso. You know, it's like a processional march. You know, it's not like like commando march or anything like that. So I like to have them play it forte, but also with very broad bows, not so heavy. We come back down to piano for the syncopation, and a lot of times this kind of gets messed up too because this is way too heavy on the syncopation. Now look at the way it's written too, because it's written 1 and 3. Okay, it's not 1 and 3. 1 and 3. That's not how it's written. It's 1 and 3. So we're moving forward. We don't want the accent on beat 1 because that breaks the 2-bar phrase that we have all the way through the section. So don't play beat 3 so short. Lead to beat 3 and play it long. 1 and 3. 1 and 3, right? We have this crescendo decrescendo effect until we go back to measure 3, which is where the segno is, so that we can do all of that A theme stuff again before we hit the coda. So where to cut loose and where not to cut loose. 19, we can cut loose a little bit as long as it's tasteful and we're still phrasing. Not out of control, but still tasteful and, controlled. And just let the natural harmonies come out and the natural phrasing come out, and the style will come out that way too. But a lot of this song is very reserved, and it requires a lot of anticipation and patience to be able to get the bigger effects to really stand out. So I'd strongly encourage you to work on dynamics with your group and really make sure that you can get a true piano sound. It's going to make the style of this piece a lot better, and it's going to be a lot more interesting to listen to. In the next video, we're going to talk about finger patterns, and we're going to talk about what needs to be done with some of these chromatic alterations and what to do about your basses that are in half position. So we'll see you next time.